Welcome to How Now, the podcast where we talk about how to live in the now. And here's your host, Kim Martin-Raymond.
Peace and blessings, love and light, and welcome to this edition of the How Now podcast, where we talk about how to live in the now. I am your host, Kim Martin-Raymond, and I'm a minister, spiritual life coach, holistic nutritionist, author, and founder of Redefinding You, LLC, where I help my clients to realign themselves, mind, body, and spirit. And welcome to the show. If this is your first time joining us, welcome to season 6 of the How Now podcast. I'm so excited that you are here and that you are a part of this new year that we're starting up. We're doing some things new. We took a little hiatus at the end of last year, and we're back strong with some powerful segments that are going to be taking place here on the How Now podcast. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But as I said, if you are new here to the How Now podcast, please make sure that you go to my website, www.hownowpodcast.com. Be sure to click your favorite podcast platform, and then be sure to like, follow, share, and subscribe. You can also scroll down to the bottom of the page and click on the banner, and it will take you to the How Now YouTube channel, where you can check out my playlists like Tuesday, where I share a scripture verse every Tuesday. And you can also check out all things How Now, some of the shows that you may have missed over the last 5 seasons of the How Now podcast. Also, check out some things with Spirit Body Transformation, where I talk about my wellness journey and my coaching. And again, all things that are happening in my now. So again, go to www.hownowpodcast.com. All right, so let's get into today's show. What we're going to be doing for 2026 is we're going to be focusing on overall health. Last year, what I did was I did a 365-day challenge, and I challenged people to create healthy habits so that way they can make overall wellness a habit. So we asked people a habit stack, things that were working for them. What are some things that you can add to it? What are some things that you can do to spice it up and make it a little bit different? So there were a lot of things that we learned along the way. The year before that, we were focusing on toolboxes and making sure that we had the tools that we needed, when life throws us a curveball. Okay, we wanted to make sure that we had the tools that we needed to respond and not react to the things that are going on around us. And so this year is all about execution. We put some tools in our toolbox. We've challenged ourselves to create some healthy habits. And now it's all about execution. So in 2026, for this season 6, I have 4 segments that we're going to be focusing on. And we'll be doing that weekly as we go through the year. Okay. One segment is going to be on living your purpose. And that's going to be with Jason Gerardo. I'm going to have a special speaker who is going to come in, or a special co-host, as you would say, who is going to come in and share some ideas and some practices and some techniques on living your purpose. Okay. And then our other segment is going to be on financial fitness. And we're going to be talking about how to exercise our financial muscles so that way we can make sure that we're creating and building wealth and legacy for our families. And that's going to be with Leah Garcia. Okay. And then we're also going to have a third segment that's going to be talking about the 12 spiritual principles. And that is going to be with Dr. Reginald Howard. And he's going to be talking about each one of those spiritual principles that is going to help us in our spiritual walk. Okay. And then finally, our newest segment is going to be Spirit Body Transformation. And that's going to be with me, Coach Kim. And, I am a certified holistic nutritionist, and we're going to be focusing on health and nutrition awareness. So we're going to be really diving in to those segments so that we're making overall wellness a habit. Okay, so as I mentioned, we are going to be talking about spirit body transformation. That's going to be the segment that we're focusing on this week. And we're going to be talking about being able to start our transformation. when we're talking about fitness and when we're talking about our eating habits and we're talking about our exercise routines, all of those things, those are the things that we want to begin doing when we talk about a wellness journey. And so before I dive into that and we take a little deeper dive and begin to peel back the onion on that, I wanted to give a little background on how I started Spirit Body Transformation. Okay. I, back in 2021, in September of 2021, was 238 pounds. And I was in a space where I wasn't feeling physically well. I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was falling asleep at the wheel as I was driving home from work. I just was lethargic. I had no energy. My body was just tensing up. I did not feel a sense of wellness. And so, in September 2021, it was actually on Labor Day, I decided to start a wellness journey. And I think I started it on Labor Day because it was for me a labor of love. And it was also a place where I wanted to birth some things that were in me that needed to come out, things that were no longer serving me. So I need to be able to push those things out so that I can make room for the transformation that I wanted to take place in my life. And so, like I said, it all started with being able to, look at my body and say, okay, what are some things that I need to do to get to that space of wellness or get to that space of feeling better? Okay. And so, as you can see, in January 2022, I had gotten down to 188 pounds. And that was huge for me because I had not been under 200 pounds since I was 17 years old. So I did not know what it was like to be smaller in my adult life. I've gotten down to a size 14 from a size 26, 28. Those of you who know sizes, women's sizes. And so this was the first time I had been down to this size, had been down to a size 14. And for me, I hadn't been in a size 14 since I was in eighth grade. So I'd always been a large child. I had almost touched 300 pounds at one point. I was a little over 300 pounds at one point. And so this was huge for me. This was a huge transformation. And it wasn't something that was just a physical transformation, it was a mental and spiritual transformation for me as well. And so I had an opportunity to see my body change. Okay, so I went from first losing 20 pounds and I did what was called a sugar shot. And so I took bags of sugar to represent my weight loss. And so in the first one, you can see I had lost 20 pounds. I had 2 bags of sugar there. Then I went on to lose 30 pounds and then 40 pounds. And then it finally got to the point where I just could not hold the bags up. I had eventually lost a total of 64 pounds. Okay. And over these 4 years, I have managed, almost 5 years now, have managed to maintain that weight loss. Okay. With about a 10-pound differential. Because what you'll realize as you're going on your wellness journey, you're going to realize that you're going to see your weight fluctuate as you make changes. As things occur. I am 56 years old. Well, I'm 55 years old. I'll be 56 in May. And it's, your body changes. I went through menopause last year. And so there are a lot of things that are different, things that I have to change, things that I have to tweak. And so you're going to see fluctuations. And so when you talk about a wellness journey, it's a journey. It's not always going to be that you get to a particular destination, but you can stay within a certain range because our body is a beast. Believe that. If you don't know anything else, our body adapts and makes changes as we make changes. And so it's important for us to get to a space of understanding, to get to a space of knowing our bodies, knowing what our bodies are capable of, and knowing, where we're going to go. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Sorry, I had to turn the phone off. It looks like it was about to ring on me. But anyway, all right. I want to show you a little bit more of the differences that I experienced as I was going through my wellness journey. Okay. We can see here in 2022, that was when I had lost the most amount of weight that I lost. When I had lost that 64 pounds. And you can see it. You can see it in my face. You can see it in my body. You know, my frame is definitely smaller. Okay. And then I look at myself in 2023. I still keeping in that vein, picked up a few pounds in there, and but you can still see that the weight loss, the toning is there. And then I put a picture of me just a few months ago, or just last month, that I took, and showing that I've still managed to maintain that weight loss. But you're seeing differences, you're seeing changes in your body, you're seeing differences in how your body reacts and responds to the things that are going on, how your body registers the food that you're eating, how your body responds to exercise. Okay. And then, I had a situation that arose in 2020. Yes, in 2020, I was diagnosed with spinal stenosis. I was having issues with my legs. Wasn't quite sure what was going on. And, I was diagnosed with spinal stenosis, and it's like a pinching of the nerve in my back. And so that changed some things for me with regards to how I exercise. So there were a lot of things that were going on, or there are a lot of things that are going to go on during your wellness journey that you need to, be aware of, and that you need to be conscious of, and that you need to be able to partner with your medical and your health team to figure out what's going to be best to do to help to tweak those changes that you're going to have to eventually make. Okay, now one thing that I did do is that I became certified as a holistic nutritionist back in 2023, and also became a simple fat burn coach that same year. Okay, when I lost the weight initially, I wanted to be able to understand what it was that my body was doing. I wanted to understand food, and how, what food did when it entered my body, how nutrition played a part in my overall wellness. And so in order for me to understand that, and to be able to maintain my weight, and to be able to know how to tweak things, I wanted to be able to get that education. And so I went through the American Fitness Professionals and Associates, and I got certified as a holistic nutritionist. And that was something that was so eye-opening for me, because now I had the words, I had the articulation, I had to, I was able to take a little deeper dive, and to see exactly what it was that food was doing, and what it was that food provided, what type of fuel it provided for my body, what types of food were going to be good for my body, what types of food, were things that I needed to shy away from. And then I also did simple fat burn, where I really tracked my food, and got to understand, how to count the calories, how to see, making small tweaks in my diet were going to be instrumental in allowing me to maintain my overall weight loss. So those were things that were important for me, to be able to understand, how the body works, how our body processes food, how exercising and toning and strength training were going to benefit me, especially as I am aging. So for me, it was important to not only lose the weight, but to understand the science behind food and nutrition, and being able to understand that. And hopefully in these segments, as we go through this year, I'll be able to share some of the things that I've learned along the way, and to be able to do it more in a layman's term, so that way we're not, going over each other's heads with the information. We want to make sure that we're sharing, or I want to make sure that I'm sharing information that's going to help you as you embark on your wellness journey, and as you embark on being able to transform yourself. Okay. And we're going to do that right now. Okay. I started Spirit Body Transformation as a health and nutrition awareness coaching service. And I did that back in 2023 and 2024. I created the Spirit Body Transformation YouTube channel where I shared, my wellness journey. I shared some of the weight loss that I experienced because I eventually got to a space where I had excess skin and had to have surgery to have excess skin removed. I had to have a reduction because I had a lot of excess skin after I lost weight. And so I talk about that part of my spirit body transformation and talk about the health and nutrition awareness. And so that's something that's going to be scrolling across the bottom of your screen if you're interested in checking out the Spirit Body Transformation YouTube channel. Okay, that's where I am sharing some of those experiences. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the year as well. But what I want to focus on this evening is talking about our spiritual, our beginning, our spiritual body transformation. Okay. And I want to bring those things up. Okay. One thing that we want to do when we start talking about starting a transformation is that I want you to make sure that you're you know making changes to your exercise, but before you make changes to your eating and exercise routine, that you're consulting your physician, your doctor, your dietitian, your health coach, whomever it is that's going to be a part of your health team. It may be more than one person. Okay, it's important that you consult that person first because you want to know where you are before you start that path to where you're going. You need to go consult your physician, make sure that you're setting appointments and going for your annual physical. That was one of the first things that I did when I started my transformation, when I started my wellness journey. I made sure that I made an appointment with my doctor and I did blood work because I wanted to see what my numbers looked like. Okay. I am a type 2 diabetic. I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes back in 2000. I did not have to take medication for it for a number of years. It's only about 6 or 7 years ago that I actually had to start taking medication for my diabetes. I had it under control. I had initially lost 100 pounds after I was diagnosed because I was scared to eat anything. I was afraid because I didn't understand. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't take any courses or have any follow up after my diagnosis came through, and that concerned me and it scared me and it caused me to make decisions that didn't help the weight loss that I obtained to be something that was sustainable because I didn't understand how I was supposed to eat. I was just like, I'm scared to eat anything, so I'm just not going to eat I'm not going to eat anything. And because I was larger at the time, the weight came off, but it wasn't sustainable because I still didn't understand how I was supposed to eat. And so that's why I say it's important for us to, once we tap in and we find out, what's going on in our bodies, once we find out what our symptoms are, then it's just so important to educate ourselves on those things. Make sure that you're educating yourself about what it is that you're diagnosed with. They may not tell you at your doctor's office, but make sure that you're going in. Do some research. Go in and start seeing what are some of the symptoms, what are some of the things that we can do. So that way, when you do meet with your doctor, you can have a conversation where you know what questions to ask. You can say, I was reading up on this diagnosis that you've given me, and now I need to know what are some things that I can do, in the interim? What are some things that I can do until I come here for my next visit? I know that you may have given me some form of medication or something to take, but is there something that I can do? Is there a way that I should be eating? Is there some type of physical activity that I can be doing that's going to assist me in being able to resolve this issue that I have outside of medication? You have to be able to ask the questions. We have to make sure that we're advocating for our health. That is so critical in our wellness journey, being able to articulate what it is that's happening in our bodies and to be able to ask the questions, and to also know that if we're not comfortable with the question, with the answers that we're receiving, that we're diligent about getting a second opinion. It's so important for us to develop and establish a relationship with our physician, our dietitian, whomever it is that's going to be part of your health and wellness team. It's important that you create that relationship, so that way you're not in a space of confusion, or you're not in a space where you're not going to be able to sustain any of the progress that you're hoping to make. Okay, so that's something that is important. So make sure that you are consulting your physician. The next thing that you want to do is make sure again that you're setting those annual physicals. Make sure that you're going to those appointments, because that's going to help you to catch any type of disease or anything that may be affecting your body that may not have been there the year before but may be there in that following year. We don't want to let years and years pass without going and getting these annual physicals, because we need to know what our body is doing, what changes our body is going through, and to be able to catch anything in its early stages if there is something that's detected. It's important for us to know our bodies. We know things through our annual physicals, but you should also be taking a good look at your own body. Know your body. Okay, take time to observe your body. Take time to run your hands over your skin. See if the texture of your skin is the way it's always been. Do you notice any bumps? Do you notice any skin tags? Do you notice any blemishes on your skin that were not there before? Take time to step in front of that mirror and get acquainted with your body. That is something that is so important, because you can miss little things if you're not careful and if you're not paying attention. They tell you to do your annual breast exams and to check for lumps, and that's for men as well, because men can get breast cancer as well. Okay, so we want to make sure that we know our body, that we're taking time to feel for anything, any indifferences, and that we're documenting any type of pain or stress or anything that we feel in our body that was not normally there. Okay, so it's important that we do that we check in with ourselves and know our bodies and become familiar with any differences or changes that we see in our bodies. We want to make sure that we're doing those eye exams. That is important as well. Now, what's interesting is that back in 2000, before I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, I had gone for an eye exam several months before that. And the doctor asked, he says, "Do you have diabetes?" And I was like, "No, I haven't been diagnosed with diabetes." And he just said, "Oh, okay." And then within that same year, I was diagnosed with diabetes. Sometimes you can see those things in your eyes. You can see the onset of glaucoma and other things like that. I have, eye disease that my grandmother's experienced, and I don't know that that's something that could happen to me as well. So it's important that I check my eyes. It's important that I'm making sure that my vision is clear. I'm getting older. It's getting a little more difficult to see at night and to be able to drive and to be able to read. And we've got so much technology and so much screen time. And so, those things can affect our eyes. So it's important for us to go in and have those eye exams. Those things are important for us to do. Okay. And then we want to also make sure that we're going for our dental exams. I get a lot of compliments on this smile, but guess what? Gum disease is hereditary in my family. Okay. And I had to have oral surgery done. I had to have partials. I had to have things done because my teeth were not in good shape. But it was important for me to be able to go in and to address that, and had to go in and have things done, because it's important that your oral hygiene is on point, because it can affect how your body chews and processes the food and how it goes down. It should not be going down in chunks because it's making your internal organs work too hard to process the food if it's not being properly chewed. So your oral health is important. It is important to be able to make sure that you're not having bleeding gums. Sometimes that shows up as a form of stress. So these things are important. There are so many things that we can see in our mouth. There are so many things that we can see in our eyes that give an indicator that's something that there may be an outlying diagnosis that needs to be dealt with. So it's important that we do that. It's important that we take time to go in and have those annual exams done so that way we are catching things before they escalate. Okay. And then again, we want to document any ailments or physical concerns that we have. Okay. And we want to share them during our visits. Write those things down. We already know that when we go to the doctor, sometimes we're having to wait, oh my goodness, an hour to see the doctor. Okay. I am a big proponent when if I pay a copay and I'm paying, let's say, let me just pull a number out. Let's say it's a $40 copay. I'm going to ask you $40 worth of questions. That's just me. I'm going to make sure that I write those things down because I want to know, or I want to remember, what it was that I may have been feeling a week ago. You know how sometimes when you go to take, you go to make a doctor's appointment, it may be 4 or 5 months out. I may not remember that 4 or 5 months ago I was having a pain in my shoulder and it's a gnawing pain. And now that I've gotten used to it, I don't even remember to bring it up. And so it's important to write things down as they're going on so that way the doctor has an opportunity to see any patterns that may be happening. How often were you feeling this? Was it just at one time? Do you remember all these things? Write those things down. Even if you put it in your phone, write it down, type it in there. Any type of ailments or anything that is going on that's been unusual, because by the time you finally get to the doctor to tell them about it, you may not remember. And God forbid you go outside and then you say, "Oh, I forgot to ask," and you turn around and come back in. You'll be hard pressed to get back in to see the doctor again to ask those questions. You know, you want to make sure that you're, on top of the things that are going on and that you're sharing that information at the time because you don't know when your next appointment is going to be. So it's important that you write those things down and that you have those conversations with your physician, okay? Because it can be a matter of life or death. So it's important that we catch things before they escalate, before they get worse. Okay, so that's a part of starting your wellness journey. Start with the basics. You have to start at the beginning. You have to start, you have to know where the starting point is before you can get to the destination. So make sure that you're doing that you're going in and finding out, what it is that you need to do, or what your results are from your exams and from your appointments. Make sure that you're documenting those things and that you're consulting your physician before you start any transformations. Okay, because they may say, "Oh, you have this particular diagnosis, so be careful not to do this or that." You don't want to find out after the fact. Okay, so that's something that is important. Make sure that you're doing that. Okay. The next thing that you want to do, and this was something that was vital once I had spoken to my doctor and once I was able to establish a plan, the first thing that I needed to do was to track my food intake. This is huge. Okay. And the reason why it's huge is because, you know, just like with your finances, you're saying, "Well, I don't know where my money is going." And then you sit down and you do a budget and you start looking at where your money, and you're like, "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize I was spending on this and I didn't realize I was doing that." The same thing happens with food. You're like, "I don't understand why I'm gaining so much weight. I don't think that I'm, eating a whole lot." But you may have eaten a whole lot of junk food, snack foods, ultra processed foods, and you were doing that all through the day. And it may not seem like you ate a lot, but what you did eat had a lot of calories in it and took you over your daily caloric intake and you didn't even realize it. For example, I used to go and get a stuffed avocado. I was like, it's an avocado. That's a good thing. Okay. Ate that stuff and got the stuffed avocado. And let me tell you about the stuffed avocado. They would slice it in half. They would put the meat. I had like it was like shrimp or chicken that they put inside. They close the avocado. They cover it with cheese, dip it in cheese, and then they deep fried it. Delicious. You hear me? It was delicious. Okay, but that alone was like 1,500 calories all by itself. Okay. And back in the day when I was eating, and I was a professional eater, trust me when I say this, okay, okay, I would do that, and uh, I would have the avocado, and then I would go ahead and have a soft drink with that, and then they keep the refills coming, okay. So what happened was, I was like, oh my goodness, all of those calories in just that one meal. And I was eating more than that sometimes. And so until you really begin to track your food, you don't know whether you're eating too much or not eating enough. Because on the flip side of that, you may not be eating enough, and you're thinking, oh well, I'm just going to have this little salad. I'm just going to do that. But your body may be craving protein. It may need things, and so it's thinking it's starving. So it's going to hang on to whatever food you put, in your mouth, because it's like, oh, I don't know when the next time is we're going to eat. Okay, so there are so many things that we need to be aware of so that we can begin the healing process. And so a huge part of going into this starting this transformation is having an idea of your food intake. What I did when I started the program that I did for as a simple fat burn coach for 2 years. I documented what I ate every single day for 2 years. 2 years. That's a long time. I'm not saying that you have to do that, but try it for a week and see what it is that you're eating and see what your eating patterns are. I travel a lot for work, and so sometimes I'm not able to prepare my meals. My meals are prepared at a restaurant. And so I had to figure out what are some things that I need to do because I'm not back there. I don't know what they're putting in the food. I don't know what's being done. So, it's important to see what happens. What happens? What fluctuations do I see in my weight as I'm going out, as I'm traveling, and the food choices that I'm making? You want to be able to see what choices you're making so that way those who are working with you or partnering with you to help you in your wellness journey can get a snapshot of how it is that you're eating and can begin to give you some suggestions and some recommendations on how to make certain tweaks. So that's going to be something that's critical when you're talking about, starting that transformation. How are you tracking your food intake? What is it that is causing an issue? What is it that may be causing you to hold on to weight? Okay, those are things that are going to be baselines for your transformation. Okay, another thing that you're going to want to do, and this is a huge one, you're going to make sure that you're eliminating ultra processed foods. Okay, let's do a little, just give just a little baby class on that. Okay, when we talk about processed foods and ultra processed foods, that's something that's interesting because people say, oh, well, I'm trying to stay away from processed food. I don't want to eat processed food. Okay. One thing that we want to understand is that anytime we would manipulate food from its original state, that is a form of processing. And that's not bad. Okay. If you take an onion and you chop that onion up, or you take an onion and you or you put it in a blender or something like that, you're processing it, but it's still an onion. Okay, you haven't done anything to I mean, you've changed the structure of it, but it's still an onion. When you take an apple, you slice the apple, it's still an apple, but you sliced it, it's not in its original state. You didn't just bite into it. You may have chopped it up, or you may have sliced it up. That's considered a form of processing. Okay, when you talk about ultra processed foods, that's where you're saying that they're adding additives and preservatives and other things that are going to change the structure of that particular food. Okay. One rule of thumb when you think about ultra processed foods is that ultra processed foods are things that you cannot replicate in your kitchen. You're not going to have soy gum and you're not going to have, yellow number six or red number four or whatever it is. You're not, unless you're a scientist, you're not going to have those things in your kitchen. So you're not going to be able to replicate some of the ingredients that are in some of these foods. That means that those foods are ultra processed. You're not going to be able to replicate them in your kitchen. You can replicate a chopped onion because all you're using is a knife to chop it up. Okay. But you're not going to be able to make, Rice Krispie treats or any other type of snack food, by adding any of those things that you don't have in your kitchen. Those are ultra processed foods. And so you want to start eliminating them. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that you go cold turkey and because there are a lot of things that are ultra processed. Okay. And so when we talk about ultra processed foods, we want to make sure that we're taking minimal steps, beginning to read labels and see what things have the least amount of ingredients in them. I had gotten to a point last year where a lot of the foods that I eat, if there are more than 5 ingredients in that particular thing, I kind of shy away from it. Okay. Because, I understand that there are going to be things that are going to be ultra processed and that it's going to take time to for our bodies to begin to adjust to those changes. We've been eating ultra processed foods and we've got all of those chemicals and things that are in our system, and it's going to take time for our body to detox from them. So, make sure that you're starting out small. Okay. Start to make those natural food choices. Start looking at, incorporating more fruits and vegetables. Sometimes we're so quick to remove things from our diet before we add things in. And sometimes it's important to go ahead and add those things in so that your body is not in shock when you start removing so many things from it that it feels like it's in starvation mode. So make sure that you're looking at some of the food choices that you're making and that you're starting to cut back a little bit on those ultra processed foods. But again, you can't do it all at one time. Take your time and say, okay, what is one thing that I'm going to try to stay away from or steer away from? Or make a better choice on, okay? And I'll give you a suggestion. You know, let's say that okay, you love potato chips, okay? If you go and you look at a bag of salt-free, Lay's potato chips, it may say that it just has potatoes and salt, and it may have one other ingredient, okay? But if you take those same Lay's potato chips and you get the barbecue or you get the salt and vinegar or you get, any other type of flavor, you're going to see that the ingredients will double just by adding barbecue to it, just by adding salt and vinegar to it. It changes it. And so, you may say, okay, I'm going to make a better choice here and I'm going to have the lightly salted, I'm just going to have the potato chips that have just the potatoes, the oil and the salt as opposed to the barbecue potato chips that are going to have all of those other ingredients in there. So you see, you're making small changes so that way your body isn't going into shock. Your body is still, able to start to make the adaptation to that new thing that you're doing without it being so harsh or so drastic that your body is like, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this. It's all about doing things that are going to be sustainable. And so you have to start small and give your body an opportunity to make the adjustment. Okay, because anytime you're making changes to your eating habits, and especially if it's something where you're heavy on carbs or you're heavy on those ultra processed foods, your body is going to go through a level of withdrawal. Okay, because you may have heard in the past people saying that, food can be a drug. There are addictive things that are put in our foods that cause us to crave those foods. And so when they're taken out of our eating regimen, then there's going to be some backlash to that. There's going to be some things that are going to affect you mentally, that are going to affect you emotionally. And your body has to be able to prepare for that. And you have to be able to mentally prepare for that. So there's a whole lot that goes with it. There's a whole lot of overlapping when you're talking about your physical wellness because it affects you mentally, it affects you spiritually. There are a lot of things that go on in your body when you're making changes to your diet. Okay. For some people, let's go on a spiritual level where they fast and they pray. Some people say when they fast, there's a level of clarity that comes with that, you know, but that's why they do it for a certain length of time too, because then after a while you don't want it to get to where it's causing your body to be in any type of distress. Okay, so it's important that we understand, the processes that we do for our eating, for our body, so that way we're not in a space of confusion. Like I said, you want to do things from a space of being informed and not informed. Again, my thing is always about responding and not reacting to things that are going on around us, and we respond when we have knowledge and when we have an understanding. We react out of ignorance because we don't know, and we're or sometimes we're fearful, and it doesn't cause us to always make the best decisions. And so we want to make sure that we're informing ourselves, that we're keeping ourselves aware of what we're putting in our body and what those things can do. Okay. And then also, I say consume drinks that will promote hydration. We hear a lot about dehydration. We are in, flu season. You're seeing a lot of people who are getting ill, and we want to make sure that we're keeping our bodies hydrated. That is so important, and that we're making sure that we're eating foods that promote hydration as well. I love me some watermelon. Okay. And I love the hydration that it brings to my body too. Celery, other things of that nature that are going to help to promote hydration. If you're not a big water drinker, what are some other things that can also promote hydration? But we still want to make sure that we're putting that water in there, in our bodies, especially in the morning. We have a lot of phlegm and things that are in our body, and mucus and things that are in our body in the morning. And so it's so important for us to have that glass of water first thing in the morning. I keep water by my bed so that when I wake up, the first thing that I'm doing is hydrating myself and cleansing some of those things out of my body. Some people add a little bit of lemon to their water. Make sure that you're doing that. You're adding things that you're adding hydration to your body first thing in the morning, and that you're avoiding those carbonated and sugary drinks. That is so important. We want to make sure that we're hydrating our bodies, because it's so easy to dehydrate ourselves, especially, like I said, when we're ill, especially during flu season, and during times when there are so many people that I'm seeing going through, little stomach bugs, and having issues with diarrhea, and having issues with vomiting and things of that nature. And so it's so important for us to make sure that we're properly, again, hydrating ourselves, making sure that the things that we're putting in our body are going to be things that are going to help to sustain us. That's what we want to do. We want to make sure that when the indicator light comes on in our bodies, that we know what to do, or that we have the tools that we need, or that we have an understanding of what certain things that we eat are going to help to naturally heal us, as opposed to reaching for a pill, or reaching for some type of medication that's going to mask those things. There are things in nature that have been healing people since the beginning of time. And so we want to get back to that space of being able to naturally heal our bodies with the nutrients that we're providing for it. And again, that's why it's so important for us to do blood work and to find out what's going on. Am I vitamin D deficient? Am I having issues with with my white blood, red blood count, things of that nature. Do I have, am I getting enough water? Am I getting enough calcium? Those types of things. And then what are things that I can eat that are going to promote that without me having to take a supplement or having to take a pill? Okay, one thing one agreement that I made with my doctor some years ago is I said, I don't want to be on any medication. Right now, I take a multivitamin, and because it's the cold and flu season, I take vitamin C, a little additional vitamin C. Otherwise, I am not on any medication. And that's wonderful to be in that space at 56 years old. Now, I've had to, make sure that I keep my A1C under control. And so I've been working on that, and my numbers have gotten low. They fluctuated and got back up. Then I had to take medication to assist with that to bring it back down. And so it's just a matter of, making sure that you're clear on your health goals and what it is that you want to do, and that you have people who are going to partner with you as you're going on that journey. It's not something that we can always do on our own. Sometimes we need people to come and to be able to assist us in that process, being able to help us to understand, how what we're eating and how we're moving our body and how those things are affecting us overall. Okay. So what I want to do is stop there, because there are so many other things that we're going to be talking about as we're going through the course of this year. There are going to be so many things that we're talking about with regards to transformation. We're going to be talking about, moving our bodies, the importance of strength training, especially as we're getting older, and the importance of, again, movement, of proper nutrition, of being able to pair the two, of things that we can do when we're outside of our normal elements. What are some things and some tips and tricks that we can use? And those are going to be things that we're going to be discussing as we go through this segment of spirit body transformation. Okay. So what I want you to do is make sure that you go to my Spirit Body Transformation YouTube channel. The link is right there on your page. Be sure to write it down, and I'll make sure that I have the link in the bio when the show airs, so that way you can keep track on what's going on in your now with regards to your spiritual body transformation. Okay, so I look forward to sharing more information as we go through 2026. Again, we've got 4 segments that we are going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about living your purpose, your financial fitness, the 12 spiritual principles, and spirit body transformation. So that way we're working on creating your overall wellness. So that way we can move the needle closer to you becoming the better version of yourself. And with that, I'm going to say thank you for joining me for this edition of the How Now podcast. Be sure to like, follow, share, and subscribe. Be sure to go to my website, www.hownowpodcast.com, and be sure to click that notification bell so you always know what's happening in the now. And until I see you all the next time, I say peace.